Welcome, everybody, to episode number 2 of Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, Igniting Leadership Excellence. I'm Rick Davis, and this is my able assistant and fantastic baker, Emily.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. She's not only my assistant, she's also my daughter and our co-host here. Last episode, or the very first episode, I was doing an introduction. I talked about 2 items that really had an impact on me in my fire service career in the early years. And one of them was the television show Emergency. And I want to mention that again because I didn't have the package there available. And yeah, it's about the Los Angeles County Fire Department, was Squad 51, Engine 51, and the paramedic program that they had going on there. And I love the show. I love the banter that they, displayed taking place in the firehouse. And it's still on television. FETV has it, and no, I don't get any kind of a kickback from FETV for promoting Emergency, but it's a great show, and that show not only had an impact on me, it had and still does have an impact on people becoming firefighters. It's like the television show Adam 12 about the Los Angeles Police Department that came on in the late 60s and into the 70s. That show had an impact on a number of people for them to become police officers.
Mm.
I also mentioned another resource that I read, and I love this book. Emily, could you share everybody that? It's a
Yeah.
report from Engine Company 82 by Dennis Smith. He's passed away a few years ago. Engine 82 is in the South Bronx in New York City, and he details what was taking place in what was referred to as the war years in the South Bronx. And it's just an absolute fantastic book. You can only get it now in used bookstores, and you'll probably have a hard time finding that.
Mm.
So, with that being said, today's episode number 2, is integrity, trust, and credibility.
Ooh.
So, with that being said, Emily, do you have anything to add before we get started on this topic?
Well, I just have to say, I love the show Emergency as well. We watched it
Mm.
when I was growing up, and now we still watch it together. And I just have really fond memories watching it. And as a fireman's daughter, it
Mm.
gave me a different perspective of seeing like what my dad did and his job. But then you also explain things to us as we're watching it. So it's not as like confusing or letting us know um, why they're checking a patient the way they are, or the rigs or different fires and stuff. So I've gained a lot from that show as well.
Yeah, cool. And as a side note, if you go to the Los Angeles County Firefighters Museum in Bellflower, California, both the squad and the engine, uh, both engines, the Ward LaFrance and the Crown, are on display out there. I had opportunity to go a couple of years ago, and it's a
Cool.
great museum. I mean, I love how they have it laid out, and the people that are staffing it as the volunteers. I had some great conversations with them. So, with that being said, today's topic is
Integrity. So let's dive right on in.
sure.
What is integrity?
Well, integrity. Integrity is certainly something that is lacking in our world today. The dictionary defines integrity as firm adherence to a code of moral values and the
Mhm.
quality or state of being complete or undivided. The Latin root word is integer, meaning a complete entity. Hell, it's also a rock solid foundation in our life. In Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 to 25, therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock, and the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house. And it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock.
Mhm.
My book right there, Emily, if you could show everybody, The Furnace of
Those are
Leadership
matching.
Development. Chapter 2 talks about trust and credibility, but chapter 1 in the book is on integrity.
Mm.
Because, hey, listen, people, if you don't have integrity, you don't have anything.
Yep.
I don't give a rip how tall you are, how short you are, how skinny, how fat. You know, I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care if you're male or female. Did you get that? Male or female? I don't care. I don't care what your education is. I don't care what your profession is. I don't care if you're a star athlete of your college football team or you've come out of the NFL. That doesn't matter. If you don't have integrity, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
Your life is not built on that rock solid foundation. It is built on sand. That song, Sinking Sand. We love going to the seashore. And you know what? You can put something in there real quick, a little sand castle. First wave comes along and it is done.
Or even your feet just sink in the sand when you're
Yeah,
letting the
that's
wave
right.
crash over
Yeah,
them.
that's right,
You
Emily.
sink deeper and
Y-
deeper.
Yeah, you sink deeper and deeper and deeper. There's a difference there, folks. Integrity is a big deal. I get daily news feeds that come from fire engineering and firehouse magazines, and it not only appalls me, but it saddens me when I read of stories that have occurred around the country that are related to integrity failures and character failures, and fire
Yeah.
departments are with firefighters. And hey, it's not just a firefighter riding in the back seat. A lot of these things are taking place up at the Puzzle Palace and headquarters, where you got the guy in the white shirt and the five golden bugles up there. Yeah, the fire chief. And I was like, oh, hey, you people, you say, oh, whoa, man, what, you calling out a fire chief? Yeah, I am. Because listen, I don't care if you're the fire chief or you're all the way down to the firefighter. When you lack integrity and you're doing something that's winding up on the national news feed, even if it's on the local news feed, you are giving every firefighter in the world a black eye because of your lack of
Mhm.
integrity. When
Yeah.
you think it's okay to skim funds from your volunteer fire department, taxpayers' money, you lack integrity and you ought to be in jail. When you think it's okay to have sex in the firehouse with a 15-year-old kid, your sorry butt ought to be in jail because you don't have any integrity.
Mm.
When you're in the back pocket of a manufacturer and you are making sure that everything is going their way, that is a lack of integrity. There's enough lack of integrity in the world today. It should not be taking place in our firehouses. It shouldn't be taking place in our
Anywhere.
homes. Yeah,
Yeah.
anywhere, anywhere at all.
Yeah.
Mm.
So we've kind of touched on this, but let's dive into it a little bit more. Why is integrity important
Yeah, we did talk about that, Emily. I'm going to tell. So where does integrity get started?
in the home?
In home. Yeah, in home. And how old do you think it is when somebody starts developing their character?
Gosh, like, I don't know, 3?
Uh-huh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. The studies show in that
Ooh,
time
I got it
period.
right.
Yeah, you got it
Oh.
right there. You can award yourself a cake pop later on. Emily makes cake pops, by the way. That's her
Yes.
business. Emily's Delights. So that's a different story right there. Side note. But as you can see, we're very informal here on Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick.
Yep.
So it gets started at home, and the studies show that between the ages of 3 and 5, that's where character is formed. So what's going on in the home, moms and dads? What are you doing? What are you doing with your children? In episode number 1, Emily talked about the times that I was on duty for Christmas, Christmas Eve, Thanksgiving, other holidays, and how they would come down to the firehouse. Hey, those of you who are firefighters, what are you doing on your off duty time? I'm not against hobbies. Just look behind me. There's stuff behind me that is a hobby. But when your hobby becomes your part-time job, and I mean fishing and hunting and sports and things like that. I'm going to reinforce this. I'm not against that. But when you spend 24 or 48 hours on the job as a paid firefighter, or you're a volunteer and you're working 10, 12 hours on your job that pays you, and then you go down to the firehouse for the rest of the evening or the weekend, what's going on at home? What message are you sending at home? You need to be building character into your children because that's where it starts. Because, hey, folks, guess what? I ran the recruiting program at Loveland Fire Rescue for 3 years, and I've had my hands into a lot of recruit academies, not only through Loveland Fire Rescue initially, but then also when we became part of the Front Range Fire Consortium, running a joint academy, and then also working in the Firefighter One program. Academy at Ames Community College. So when you aren't taking care of character issues at home, you are abdicating your authority. You are abdicating your responsibility as a parent to raise your kids. Guess what? We wind up dealing with it in the recruit academy. We wind up dealing with it in day number 1 and day number 2 because they have no clue what discipline is or anything.
They're in for a rude
They're
awakening.
in for a rude awakening. And such as a friend of ours that Emily and I both know is she does a lot of tutoring for a high school. And what is one of the big issues that they deal with, Emily? What does Missy deal with a lot?
It's plagiarism and lack of respect, especially the lack of respect for the teacher and her as the teacher as well. And it's just so sad that this is what the generation is being brought up with.
That's
right
right.
now.
That's right. Plagiarism. Plagiarism. You could get thrown out of the executive fire officer program for plagiarism. Even if you've graduated and it's determined that somebody brings forward is like, hey, Joe Schmuckatelli's paper that he wrote in his 3rd year at the EFO, he didn't cite such and such. And they go back, they being the staff, they go back and they investigate that and they determine, yes, this is plagiarism. And then they reach out to the author of that paper to determine exactly what happened. And Dennis O'Neill, who was in charge of the National Fire Academy at the time that I was back there at the National Fire Academy, that he made sure that everybody knew in the EFO, because he'd show up on the very first day of class and say, this is what's going to happen if you plagiarize. And then Chuck Burkell, who was in charge of the EFO program, he made sure as well. Then the 2 instructors would make sure. So it was really reinforced. Pardon me. So if it was determined that the author of the paper plagiarized somebody else's work, guess what happened to them? Their graduation certificate was yanked, and they were not allowed to return to the fire academy again. A letter would go out to the fire chief, and sometimes it was the fire chief who was doing it. And the letter would also go to the mayor, the city manager, or the board president, whatever form of governance was taking place in that fire department. And then the jurisdiction had to pay back all the travel expenses to the government for doing it.
Wow.
So that's what, and it's nice to know that that portion of the federal government was holding people accountable. Too bad it's not happening, another hour and a half down the road from Emmitsburg, Maryland, and DC,
Right.
where those people aren't even holding themselves accountable.
They'd
That's
be much better off if there was integrity there.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hey, folks, if you've watched episode 1 and now you're watching episode 2, Emily and I, we're not going to cut any bones about anything here. We speak the truth. We are not politically correct individuals, and we're not here to kiss anybody's rear end. I'm an operations guy. I worked in the firehouse. I worked out in the street. I am not a politician, and I can 100% guarantee that she is not a politician either.
Well, not all. And part of the title of Jersey Rick is it's coming along with your South Jersey charm. So bluntness will definitely be involved and telling the truth. And if you don't like it, well then, sorry, not for us.
So our question is, why is integrity important? It opens doors. When you're a person of integrity, it's going to open doors. Hey, do you think the bank president who's been skimming funds and winds up in, the state prison or the federal prison, what kind of integrity do they have? Are they ever going to be able to get employed again, in banking?
No.
No.
I mean, unless it's like a
So,
deal.
a person of integrity, it opens up doors for them.
Yeah.
And, a quote from my book, The Furnace of Leadership Development: maintaining our integrity builds courage, develops confidence, and reaps the reward of a clean and clear conscience. You can look yourself in the eyeballs in the morning when you're brushing your fangs without being guilty. You can look your daughter in the eyes without feeling guilty. You can look other people in the eyes without feeling guilty. And you know what I'm talking about. And I hope that you're listening to this, that you are a person of integrity. But I guarantee you've been around people who aren't. You see their shifty eyes going up and down. A lot of them at Capitol Hill.
Well, I like what you said in the definition that it builds courage because having integrity sometimes means having to do the really hard thing
Mhm.
and putting yourself out there. And you may lose relationships, you may lose some things, but in the end, it's worth it because you're keeping your integrity. And like you said, you can go to bed with a clear conscience.
Mhm.
And so it's not worth it to plagiarism. It's not or plagiarize. It's not worth it to not have integrity. Even if there is going to be a cost, I think the cost to pay with having integrity is far less than not having integrity.
Right. I agree, Emily. And hey, listen, it does take courage to maintain your integrity because you're going to be faced with things called peer pressure
Yeah.
that if you give in, you're compromising your integrity. And for those of you who are watching that have attained the higher ranks in the fire service, you've seen this. Yeah, you've seen this. And those of you who are at the chief level ranks, you've definitely seen this when the political arena starts to come into play. When you've got politicians, elected officials or appointed officials, and they want you or the organization to do something that is unethical. Yeah, you might lose your job, but in the end, what would you rather do?
Yeah.
Stand for what's right and take the chance of losing your job, or compromise your integrity? Because once you go down that path, it can become a slippery slope. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 3 says, the integrity of the upright will guide them.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, did I answer your question, Emily?
I think you did. And so I think we touched on why, if integrity is lacking in the world today. But do you want to elaborate any more on what happens when people or organizations, corporations, businesses, governments, and purses, churches lack integrity?
Enron. Yeah, Enron, that financial institution that ripped off, thousands of people, and collapsed. We see these things, so often, and it's become more frequent as the years go by. The news media, you
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. If you
Don't
actually,
have to say anything else in
yeah,
that one.
that's right. Yeah, if there actually is a physical newspaper that you pick up, because most of the stuff's online today,
Yeah.
as Watch the Truth.
Yeah.
I've been interviewed by the news media. There was one reporter in particularly locally that interviewed me when I was in charge of our wildland firefighting program. And when the article came out, it's like, I didn't say that, and I
Mhm.
didn't say that, and I didn't say that. The guy was an abject liar.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, that individual didn't have any integrity. Now, I can't blame the editor, because that editor was accepting what that reporter wrote. Uh, but I don't know behind the scenes. So yeah, these are you create a world of distrust. When
Yeah.
there is a lack of integrity, credibility goes down the tank, and so does trust. And we see that play out all throughout the world today.
Absolutely. It's such a tragedy, really.
It is. Yeah, it is. It is a tragedy.
So in your book, The Furnace of Leadership Development, you refer to a triad. Did I say it correctly? A triad of strength. What is that?
Think of a triangle, and a triangle
Mm.
is a very strong structure.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it holds up a lot of weight. So that triad of strength, when you look at those three sides, yeah, the base is integrity, then you have trust, and then credibility on the other
Mm,
side. So you have a very strong personal structure, a structure of moral character,
hmm.
a structure of strong ethics, which one of the stories I've heard John Maxwell mention is several years ago. It was after the 2008 financial problems in the country, uh, related to integrity and other things. Is a corporation, or might not have been a corporation, but someone came to Maxwell and asked him, "What's the difference between ethics and business ethics?" And he said, "There is none. There is
Yeah.
no difference between ethics and business ethics." He said, "Ethics is ethics across the board,
Yeah.
regardless of whether it's in your personal life, business, or governments. Ethics are ethics. When you have people who define personal ethics, business ethics, government ethics, you got a problem.
They lack
They
integrity.
lack integrity. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, because they're starting to segment those areas out right there. It's like, okay, well, I got personal ethics at home, but my business, it's all right to overcharge them. They won't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely an issue that exists there with a mentality like that.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. So, how are trust and credibility created, and which one comes first?
They build simultaneously, I believe. And how are they created? It takes time.
Yeah.
And some people, I'm going to repeat this one: integrity, integrity, integrity. You know, both the trust and the credibility are built on that foundation of integrity. Let's
Yeah.
use the example of someone who enters a fire academy. Then here regionally, a fire academy is going to be kicking off next month. Excuse me. You got somebody who's brand new. They're coming into the academy. And let's talk about the person who has never had any experience with the fire service. I'm not talking about a lateral transfer, but someone who's never had any experience. They may not have been in a fire station in their life until now, that they have been hired and they're on the job. Well, there's so many things to learn about firefighting. It goes all the way from fire behavior up through, wearing personal protective equipment, and throwing ladders, pulling hose, forcing doors, all of that. That person on day one of the academy, where is their credibility level? Is we
Probably like a 0 to a
Yeah,
1.
a zero to one. If we were rating that on a scale of 0 to 10, a zero to a one. So they go through an academy, however many weeks, let's say 4-month academy, and they graduate. Now, within the academy environment itself, with their instructors and with their fellow recruits, where do you think they're on that scale of 0 to 10? Where would their credibility level be?
Could be a 3 to 5, depending on how well they did in the academy, and,
Yeah, it
you
might
know,
even be higher
could be higher.
within that
Yeah.
square box of the academy environment. It could even be
Oh, true.
higher.
It could be rating really
Yeah. So
low.
yeah. So let's say that
10.
within, yeah, it could be 10. It could be 8, 9, 10. There could be some schmoes, that's down, 2 or 3.
Well, because 'cause aren't there,
Mm.
like, awards given
Mhm.
after the
Yes.
academy too of, like, leadership and
Yeah, there's awards
different
that
things
are
like
given
that?
to the top recruit, the one who has performed
Class
the most.
leader.
Yeah. So they have that credibility and that trust, because they've built simultaneously together in that environment.
Yeah.
Now they graduate, and that firefighter, Eddie or Betty, they are assigned out onto shift into a company, or if it's a volunteer fire department, they've graduated the academy, and so now they're ready to respond to calls. Where is their credibility and trust level with the people now that they're working with?
Hmm. Well, let's see. I think it's getting bigger, but they have to prove themselves on the rig,
Yeah,
though, because most of the people that they're working with now in the stations don't know them,
Mhm.
right? So they're
Yeah.
kind of coming off on a fresh start,
So
really.
it dips down.
Okay.
It dips down.
Yeah.
The people that they're going to be working with, you know, they know what they went through in the academy. They know the type of training that they did. And hey, firefighters talk. Yeah, we did it all the time as a battalion chief. When at that point, the academy rotated around to the different jurisdictions. But when we were on duty and they were at our training area, I'd go down there and I'd watch. I'd look at how they were performing. You'd listen to the instructors or what they were saying. Hey, who are the top performers? Not only top performers, who are the ones who are behaving at the top? Who are the troublemakers?
Yeah.
Who are the ones that lack integrity? And they eked their way through the interview process, and
Mhm.
they've got a future career as the organizational monster, which that's another
Chapter book.
that's another chapter in the book, chapter 3, as a matter of fact. But yeah, that is what happens with trust and credibility and how you build
Mhm.
it. And it'll dip down. And I saw that in my career. When I was an engineer, driver, operator, my trust and credibility level was higher. When I got promoted to lieutenant, well, it dipped down a little bit because people knew me, but how was I going to perform as a company officer?
Yeah.
And then that trust level, went up. And then when I got promoted to battalion chief, it dipped down again. Why?
Mm.
Because I'm in a different role.
Yeah.
And the people in the department, and in particular my shift, they didn't know how I was going to function in that role. So then over the years, that trust and that credibility goes up. So that's how you build trust and credibility.
So really just varies with where you're at in
Yes.
life, what positions you're working in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But still
Absolutely. And
having that solid foundation for yourself
Mhm.
of integrity, um, and building that credibility and
Right.
trust for
And
others.
and I will add also that trust and credibility is built by people who are jumping in and doing the work.
Mm.
Not when, let's
Yeah.
go back to a fire scene. And now you got, hey, the people who are not firefighters or are watching this or listening to this is most of the civilians disappear once the flames go away. You don't see the rest of the dirty work that's taking place inside, pulling the ceilings, rooting through the walls, materials and stuff like that, looking for hidden fire to make sure the thing's out. And then there comes the cleanup, the pickup of the hose. So
Mhm.
hey, where's Joe Schmuckatelli? We're loading 5-inch hose on the back of the rig. We got 700 feet of 5-inch hose out there, and it needs to be loaded plus other hose. It's got to be rolled up, it's got to be clean, and so forth like that. Yeah, and I've worked with people like this over the years throughout my entire fire service career, 37 years. You always got one or two is they want to shy away.
Yeah.
Or yeah, and they don't have any trust or credibility. Or from a firefighting perspective, you've got the person that, and I got one example right here. We had part-time firefighters for a while, and right at their particular shift change, we got dispatched to a structure fire, a commercial structure fire, and the guy that should have been on the rig just, the company officer told me later on, he just stood there and froze,
Oh,
and
that's
the
no good.
oncoming guy jumped on, fortunately, because I said, well, we're such and such. Oh, well, here's a story there. I'll tell you later,
Mm.
type of a thing. So that person that just stood there and he went away. By the way, there's no trust in anybody like that. When you're
No.
regardless of whether it's fire, EMS, police, or military, anything that is a high risk, dynamic environment where somebody's doing something stupid or, yeah, there's going to be a natural fear. I mean, hey, something's on fire, or, somebody's shooting at you. For those of you in the military or law enforcement, there's a natural inclination is, oh, this should be going the other way.
Yeah.
But when you're going into it, yeah, that's courage. And, the
Yeah.
Marine Corps defines courage as, the control of mental and physical control of fear,
Mm.
is what that is. So
That's
we've talked
interesting.
about that enough, I think.
Yeah.
Can we move on?
Yeah. So, what is the importance of relationships and building trust and credibility? And before you answer, I just want to say that trust should not be given easily.
Mhm.
It has to be built.
Yes.
You're not supposed to just automatically give it to someone. And I had a boss who actually thought that I should give trust easily to someone who completely had broken my trust, that barely even had trust. And it was a work harassment situation. And she didn't understand why I was like, no, I'm never going to trust this person again. And if I do, it's going to take a very long time. And she just could not understand that. But I think it goes back to that she herself lacked integrity,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. You bring up a good point there, Emily, about that. And as a side note, we've all, had to endure those annual HR classes where you come together and they threaten you, with your job or being demoted or being sued or going to jail, all those type of things. If you do any of this long list of things,
Yeah.
well, that doesn't always play out, and we won't go into the situation that Emily was involved with, but there was definitely, and she was working in a governmental entity as well at the time. So there's a lot of stuff that's nothing but smoke and mirrors. And then when the rubber, meets the road, it's not followed through because of a lack of
Yeah.
integrity. So,
Absolutely.
so you asked about relationships.
Yes.
If you don't spend time with your people as a leader, you're not going to develop a relationship with them. And I'm not talking about something that where, you get off duty and you go out, and you're hunting, you're fishing buddies with somebody, you're always going down to the hockey game, the football game, I'm not talking about that. As a battalion chief, I was committed to spending time out in the fire stations with the people assigned to my shift. I would go down to the training area. I would watch them train. I would help them load hose when it was time to load hose. You got to spend time with people because if you
Yeah.
don't develop a relationship with someone, you're not going to develop the level of trust that needs to be in place there. And I have had bosses and supervisors throughout my life, throughout my career, that the only time you saw them was when there was some kind of a problem. Now, if anybody on here that is listening, do you actually think that you've got trust in somebody that you only see when there's a problem?
No,
No, absolutely, absolutely not.
because they're absent. And because of that, you really don't have respect for them.
That's great.
It's just like, oh, they're here again because they're just, I'm putting out flames,
Yeah, yeah,
so to
yeah,
speak,
yeah, exactly.
or
That
they
is,
want something.
yep, exactly it. Hey, you know, it doesn't kill you to ask questions of the people who are working for you or that you are around. I mean, genuine questions to learn something about them.
Mm,
And I just posted my weekly blog today, and it's about bridging gaps. And I related the story of a coworker in another fire department who constantly complained about the younger firefighters on his shift because they would always ask him questions, and he viewed it as a challenge to authority.
mm,
And then when I would ask them about this, is there really a challenge to authority, or are they just trying to learn? Here's an opportunity for you to get to know them and them to get to know you. And in the fire
yeah,
service, that's paramount because, hey, you're going to go into something, an emergency situation with somebody. You want to have trust with the people you're working with. It gets bigger, and you got a battalion chief that's showing up and who's going to become the incident commander. Hey, battalion chiefs or whatever your title is that you're an incident commander, if the troops don't trust you, they're always going to have one eye over their shoulder. And if you're a distant battalion chief,
mm,
and I've known those, and I had a great conversation with a fella a couple of years ago from California who was sharing how they never saw their battalion chief.
wow,
Yeah, and they don't trust the guy. So that's the importance of relationships, spending time with people, getting to know them so they can get to know you, so they know what to expect of you.
yeah,
And when you develop that type of a relationship with people, that trust is going to go up and that credibility is going to go up. And hey, For those of you who are in, well, I almost said leadership positions, but positions of authority, and you say, I don't have the time to go build any type of a relationship with the people that are working for me. I own my business. I own this. I'm the chief. Blah, I'm this, I'm that. Well,
Missing out.
they're missing out. How did Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of England during World War II, have the time to go to the docks and visit shipyard workers? How did he have the time to go out to the factories? How did he have a time to visit the troops?
You make the time.
He makes the time. How
have to
did
be intentional.
Napoleon, the Emperor of France, have the time to go visit his officers and troops in the field? And they were on horseback. And then one final example, General George S. Patton Jr. in World War II visited the troops when they were getting shot at and
Wow.
when he was getting shot at. So when I hear people who are in these positions of authority say, I just don't have the time to do it. You got to make the time.
Yeah.
You've got to make the time. So,
And it comes down to your priorities. Like, what are you prioritizing? Are
absolutely.
you prioritizing the people that you're leading, or are you prioritizing more of the management, like the systems and the processes, and also brushing shoulders with those that are higher up?
Yes. Yes. Are you discounting the troops who want you to show up at the firehouse at lunchtime so you could go to lunch with the board president or the mayor or the city manager, and you're blowing them off?
Yeah.
Not that it's not important to go to lunch with those other ones, but when you've got it scheduled and it's on the schedule that you're going to go out to a fire station and have lunch with the crews, and then the board president walks in and says, hey, let's go to lunch. And you say, oh, okay. You are showing who you value the most and who you disvalue.
Well, and when you think about it, it's like who goes and fights the fires, who goes to the car accidents, who goes to all these calls. It's not the board president, it's the people, the firemen in the firehouses. Like, those are what make the fire department.
And for you politicians who are watching saying, you don't understand, Rick and Emily, you don't understand. Those are the people that approve our budgets. Yeah, I understand that. But I want you to understand that there's a priority. There's a priority that exists. And on those last minute pop-ins, when you've got something scheduled and the politician pops in and wants to do this with you, you need to have the integrity and the courage to say, hey, I've scheduled time to go out to fire station such and such for lunch with the crews. This is something that I need to do. Why don't you come along with me so they can get to know you as well? So we'll wrap that up for this episode, number 2 on integrity, trust, and credibility.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining myself, Jersey Rick, and my able co-host, Emily. Thank you for today. We'll see you later on episode number 3.